guys, so welcome to week 2 of our design course. So in this week we'll be looking at core design principles, and we would cover hierarchy, spacing, and visual balance. Hierarchy, spacing, and visual balance as core design principles. So let's get into it. So this will be our objective. We would understand and apply the concept of visual hierarchy in UI design, use spacing to create clarity and organization, recognize and design for visual balance using symmetry, constraint, and layout consistency. And then lastly, balance element visually to create aesthetically pleasing designs. Yeah, so I know all of these that we've been going through for now are more of theory. We've just been talking, but these are very important because we don't just want to jump into Figma and then start using the tool. We are going to move into Figma though, but it's important that we know this, we understand this concept, because when we go into Figma and then we start working, this would be the knowledge we will apply on using Figma. So Figma is just a tool that you use, but if you don't have this prior knowledge to it, you would get the tool and you would be lost. You will not know exactly what you want to do with it. So it's important that we get this knowledge, because this is the core of it. This is the foundation. We are trying to build a solid foundation for ourselves moving forward to become product designers. So let's proceed. Introduction to core design principles. What are the core design principles? Now, these are fundamental concepts that make a design readable, structured, and engaging. Whether designing a website or an app, these principles guide how information is presented. So the core design principles are more of guidelines that would guide you while you're doing your design, either mobile design or web design. So these are just laid down principles that you need to follow. You need to play along with them, because if you beat any of them or you cut corners, anybody can just point out and say, this person is not even actually following the design principles. So as product designers, it is very good. We are not graphic designers, but we are designing also. It means that these principles are not just for graphic designers. It is called core design principles. So it cut across various aspects of designs: visual design, graphic design, and so on and so forth. So let's go into it and see what are the core design principles. So number 1 is visual hierarchy, the arrangement of elements to show their order of importance. Of course, if you have a screen that contains or houses several informations, it will carry a picture. Some of our screens carry picture, carry titles, carry subtitles. You see order and little caption. You would see buttons. You will see input field. You need to properly structure these things. They need to be a hierarchy. You need to present this element in such a way that you would guide the visuals of the visitor or the user. You would direct the user to what you want the user to see first. So this is what we call visual hierarchy. There needs to be an order. We could also say visual order. So the arrangement of elements to show their order of importance. They are all important, but their importance level comes in hierarchy. That's just it. It comes in hierarchy. So you cannot just display all these elements to be on the face of the user or the visitors, and you want them to just look at the buttons, look at the text, look at the title, look at the images all at once. You'll be causing a lot of confusion. So you need to place order. Now, the process of placing that order is what we call visual hierarchy. Now, why is it important? It helps users know where to look first and navigate easily. If they land to your screen, what information do you want the users to see first, and then how you are able, or how you intend to help them navigate easily throughout that screen. So let's proceed. Now, how do you apply visual hierarchy? One way to apply visual hierarchy is through size. bigger element attract more attention through size. Now we are using the case study of this screen that we have here now is the landing, the hero section of the site called Framer. And when you log into this site, this is the first thing you would see. You see a bold caption, a bold hero caption that says just publish it with Framer. Now you could see how that differ in size to even the navigations you have at the top, and then the subtext you have below it that says the website builder loved by designers. You could see the disparity, the difference in size. Why? This is intentional. This is what we call visual hierarchy. The designer of this website wants you to read or wants you to see that big bold text first. It is intentional. They made it big for a purpose. They are trying to follow the design principles of visual hierarchy. Do you get? So that's why you have that, and it is deliberate as deliberate could be. So that's one way that you could express visual hierarchy by size. You want this text that reads just publish it with Framer. You want that to be like the caption there, the center of attraction, the first thing users or visitors would read. One way to make that possible is to make it bigger. So let's proceed. So another way to apply visual hierarchy is through color and construct. Bright or contrasting colors pop up. Now, if you see the text we have in our front, the caption or the line, you will read this first. It's just sometimes these things work like magic. It is because the whole typography layout is following a visual hierarchy. Now, with the color of this text, not just because it is big, just because, yeah, it is big also, and then it is in white. But now take note of the first word, you. Notice you has a different color with the rest. Most of them are in white, and then the other ones in the color you have there. But then the U, same font, same size with the other ones. That one attracts your eyes first. It is the first thing that your eyes will tend to move towards to. Why? Because of the contrasting color compared to the rest. The yellow is popping and it's just drawing your attention. So that's one way that you could express visual hierarchy also. Another way you could express visual hierarchy is in typography. Heading, subtext, body text. This is similar to size that we just said, because typography is text, it is font, and it is size. So you notice the typography of the just publish it with Framer is different from the rest, and it commands that attention also. And then another way to express visual hierarchy is spacing and grouping items. Grouping items placed together are seen as related. When you place items together, when you group items together, there's a psychological message it sends to the viewers or visitors. When you see things together, it just gives you an idea that these things are similar. These things are similar. Now, if you take a close look at the navigation menu at the top, you see how they are grouped together. When you see that, you know, of course, these are navigation menus. So they all serve the same purpose. When you click them, each and every of them routes you to a different page, right? They are navigations. So you see that navigations are grouped together. Now the cards below also are grouped together. So the spacing it creates, you see the lot of space you have between the navigation at the top and then the cards together. This is hierarchy. Everything is not just compressed and jam-packed together. The designer is doing this deliberately. He's trying to send a message to people that are viewing the site, because the designers will not be there or put like a voice over and say, oh, this is what this does and this is what that does. But the designer is able to communicate this through obeying design principles when it comes to spacing and grouping items together. Another way to display hierarchy is by positioning. positioning is another way to display hierarchy. Now you notice this same screen we're making use for reference, the text in white that is bold and big is positioned at the top. That is also a deliberate move. It's one way to place hierarchy. The designer wants the visitors to see this first. It is positioned at the top for a purpose. So when you log into this site, your eye tries to read from top down, except for cases where the designer is so creative to maybe play with the elements below that will draw your attention. But this will logically draw your attention first. Why? Because it is positioned at the top and not the bottom. As humans, we try to read things digitally like this. We try to read screens from top, bottom. So that's one way also to display visual hierarchy. So the next thing we are seeing as a core design principle is white space, spacing or white space. Now, spacing is so important. Beginners would have serious issues with this at first. At first, you wouldn't really want to understand the concept of spacing, but I will try to give us some examples so that we would understand. Spacing are deliberate. There are several professional companies that apply this and designers that apply this because they understand the effect of spacing. It brings clarity and so much more. Now, the empty space between elements is what we call white space. If you look at the screen now, we have the heading for this section called title spacing and then white space in bracket. Now, we had a space before we start itemizing the other stuff below, the definition, why it matters, and the type. They are not all clustered together. There's a space between them. Now, if I brought, or the designer of this template merge all of this together, it will be more difficult for us to perceive and to read visually. So this space that was created in between all of these listed items makes it very easy for us to just see and read, and we could be like, oh, so the heading for this section is spacing, white space, and then we have three items. We have definition, we have why it matters, and then the type of it. This spacing gives you that leverage, readability. It prevents cluster, it improves readability, and it creates focus. It's very easy for you to just move to the next point because of that space in between. How do you achieve this, or the types of this spacing? We have padding. Padding are inside element. I'll show us an illustration to clearly define this. So padding are that spaces inside an element, and then margin are spaces outside an element, the line space between. And then we have line space. Padding are inside element space, margin are space outside an element, and then we have line spacing, that is the space between text. Now this image gives us a clear definition or illustration of this white space. You could see the element below and then the element down. This is Apple website. You could check that also to see. Now Apple are so good with white space. Apple have mastered the idea behind using white space. It helps them section their elements in a very clear and put together layout that it will be so easy for you to focus on a particular thing they want to show you, or they want you to see at a certain time. Your eyes are not glanced to two things at the same time because of this white space. You could see how they use white space. Somebody might just come here now and say, oh, why do we have a lot of white space? Why are there no element there? But these things are done for a purpose. It is not a mistake. It is a deliberate move by the designer. So now let's really understand this marginal padding. Let's take this element, the input field, where you input your password, for instance. Now you see where the red arrow is. We stated earlier that padding is the space inside an element, right? Now the input field is an element. Now the space between the content of that element, we have a text inside the input field, and then we have an icon also. Now the space between the content of that element and the border of that element, yes, is called padding. The space between the content of an element and the border of the element is called padding. So that space around the text there, you could see by the left, and then the space around the icon by the right, both top and bottom, right and left, is called padding. Now what is margin? Because these things are mixed up sometimes. Programmers also will understand this, but as designers we should understand better, because we design first of all before they build. Now margin is the space between two elements. The first one, we are talking about the space inside an element. The input field is an element, and then the space inside that input field, the space surrounding the content of the element, is padding. Now margin is the space between two elements. Now you notice that card, we have a card that houses the profile picture of this user, the welcome text, and then the element inside and other things. The whole card itself can be defined as an element. Now the button below the card is another element. So you notice the space between the card and the button is called margin. So margins are space, a gap between two elements, while padding are the space inside an element. When we start designing with Figma, and as we progress, we would understand this concept very, very well. Now, the third thing in design principle, we've seen hierarchy, we've seen spacing, is visual balance. There is a need for visual balance when we are designing as designers, especially product designers, because if our visuals, the element we put in together for these designs, the screens we design, and the elements are not balanced, they will not be readable. Viewers will have issues digesting the information that are there. So visual balance is an even distribution of elements to create harmony. There needs to be harmony if you are designing, especially as a product designer, because remember, in our week one lesson we understood that product designers are designing to solve real world problem. So it means if you're having an error in your design, you are hindering somebody's solution to a problem. Do you get? Somebody is trying to book for a doctor consultation app, and then the person does not understand your layout and the person cannot navigate through because of your bad representation of visual balance. That person will not use that digital product, and then you are indirectly hindering that person from getting the consultation with the doctor. So you see how this can really go far and affect users that use the platform you'll be working on. So there needs to be harmony. You need to know, these are just the basics. If you know this, and these are our foundations, these are like the pillars that we'll be building on. So if you know this basic, moving on is just going to Figma, start mastering Figma using the tool. But this is the knowledge that you would apply on Figma. Now, why does visual balance matter? Balanced designs feel stable and trustworthy. We'll see an example quickly. If you are in a platform, let's say you visit a website, take Apple for instance, and see how everything is being put together. There's a level of trustworthiness. This thing is like a psychological play. There's a level of trustworthiness that you get, and you say, oh, this thing is so well put together, there is no issue, it just flows naturally, and then you'll be able to consume the information that are there. But if the elements are not well put together, like I used to have issues navigating through some of these Nigerian universities' websites, because they use it's not because they use WordPress and some of these other builders to develop those sites, but it's because of even the themes they use, the color they use, they don't follow. There is no visual balance, there is no hierarchy. You see a red text by the right, you see a yellow text close to the red text. Everything is just messed up together. So you even like that trustworthiness, it just feel like a scam website, if you would ask me. So you'd see how design can even improve trustworthiness. It is very, very important. So what are the types of visual balance? We have symmetrical visual balance, we have asymmetrical, and then we have radial. These are just simple terms. So before we look at some of the types of visual balance, let's take a look at this image, and you would see how visually balanced this layout is. I just cropped this from Apple website. You could also check it out and see. Very well put together. You could see each of the section have similarities. They have an image, a mock-up being displayed, they have a title for that section, and then they have a button. The same thing follows for the three sections. You see how well put together and how balanced it is. You see the use of white space, the space between each of these elements, the space between the heading and the button. You see how close they are, and then you see the space they now have from that section to the mock-up image they are trying to display. You see the space by the left and right. How fantastic and how well put together this is. So let's see some of the types that we just mentioned of visual balance. Symmetrical visual balance. This is a mirrored layout that is centered content. Symmetrical visual balance follows a mirrored layout pattern. So this is more of having a grid. If you see the image, we have a square form shape, and then we have a circular shape, and see how they just mirror them, and then it follows like a grid system, like a checkbox, where you just put each of these elements together, and looking at it with your eyes, you have a sense of balance. You have a sense of balance. There are 4 spaces that are all occupied, so it shows a sense of balance. It's not like dancing on one leg. So let's look at the next. Now, the concept with this is you have different elements but visually balanced by weight. Now, the element by the left is a square, a heavy square, no space, thick heavy square, right, by the left. Now, the elements by the right are circles. Now, even though one of the circle is not as big as the square, but you have 4. They added more weight to the circle just so that it could balance the square by the left. No, so looking at this with your eyes at a glance, there is a sense of visual balance that it gives you. There is a sense of visual balance that it communicates to the viewer. And then the last is radial visual balance. And this is just in a circular or a radial form. When you balance elements, when we start doing practical designs, we would see some of the applications of this. That there are some items that probably you don't want to put them in a grid format. You don't want to use asymmetrical visual balance to maneuver. That the only way you could actually maneuver is to go with this radial. So we would see more practicals of this when we begin our practical class with Figma. So we've actually come to the end of week 2. Can't wait to see you in week 3.